Chapter 10. Thinking Clearly. Blankenship awoke with eyelids snapping open, eyes bulging, and taking in a deep breath, much like someone who had been underwater for much too long. Drowning in sorrow and the need for vengeance was just what caused his failed charge to assault the enemy, in a charge where his body gave out long before the enemy ever appeared in his sights. Feeling the effects of his brain being hammered by the percussion of the bombs and topped off by dehydration, Blankenship wondered if he had ever had a hangover that was so intense. Still barely able to move, he could feel his dry lips cracking as he tried to moisten them, but found little relief from his dry, scaly tongue. Looking around with dry eyes, Blankenship could see the light of day fading away, but then he wondered to himself if it was returning instead. From where he lay, the light in the distance was a little stronger, but at the moment his sense of direction was gone, and with the distortion around him, he had nothing to judge direction. At the moment, whether it was night or day was of no concern to him, as he felt along the ground for his rifle, finding it just inches away. Sliding his arm through the strap and then swinging it toward his back, he could feel muscles refusing to move. With every aching movement, he knew if he did not get something to drink soon, his body would just stop working like a car running out of gas. After many attempts to stand, Blankenship gave up and began to crawl as he swept his right hand left to right in the poor light, struggling to keep the muscles in his left arm supporting his body while he searched. To Blankenship, the search seemed to take a long time and cover a few city blocks, when in reality it had only been minutes and covered a matter of feet. With the clouds above blocking moon and starlight, the darkness made the search more difficult. Sliding his hand along the concrete, he felt something cool and wet, causing his mind to race with anticipation of something cool to drink. Slowly he brought his hand up to his nose to first give the substance a smell test. It only took him a slight whiff to determine from the copper and iron smell that he was not going to have his thirst quenched, not unless he was a vampire. Since he was not a creature of the night, Blankenship wiped his hand as best he could on the pavement before continuing his search in a direction away from the blood. Again, his hand swiped across the concrete, searching for a bottle of any drinkable liquid, and as he searched, the light seemed to fade, but in his current state, it was hard to determine if it was fading or if he was losing consciousness once again. Back and forth his hand moved, striking empty bottles, cans, papers, debris, and meaty substances that he was sure he did not want to see. Suddenly, during what felt to be his many hours of searching, when it had in fact only been about 10 minutes, Blankenship's ears perked up at the sound of running water. Not just running water, but water running nearby. With a little more speed in his crawl, he headed for it with his hand stretched out in search as the sound grew. Minutes passed as he searched in the darkness for the water source he could hear clearly. Just as he felt he would never find it, his hand hit the concrete curb, landing in the water running alongside the street. With little concern as to where the water was coming from or what it had picked up as it ran along the city street, Blankenship quickly lowered his lips down into the stream. Feeling his lips soak up the moisture like a dry, crusty sponge that had been found underneath a kitchen sink, lost and forgotten forever, Blankenship began to sip, but was unable to swallow. Filling his mouth with water, he felt the tissue coming back to life as he slowly turned his head to the side for the water to rehydrate his throat. Feeling his ability to swallow returning, he plunged his lips back into the stream, thankful to have found it before dehydration overcame him. With every sip, he thought about a documentary he watched on a tribe in Africa that mixed blood in with milk to help them stay hydrated in the desert. Not that it was so interesting then, but with the strong taste of salt, copper, and iron from the blood mixed in with the water, he wondered if it would have the same effect seconds before his body shut down. Feeling his energy leaving, Blankenship used the last of it to turn his head downstream. "Kaylee, you need to stay close to me," Blankenship called out while he scooped up another shovel of dirt from the hole that would be their safety from the world. With every shovel of dirt he removed, he looked over to ensure Kaylee was still there, unable to shake the feeling that something was not right. Faster and faster he dug, yet the hole never grew in size. No matter how fast he moved, with every scoop he removed, it fell back in before his shovel could return. Looking down, he could feel the earth fighting against him as his feet sank into the dirt. Struggling to free himself, Blankenship looked up to see an artillery shell heading their way. Looking over, full of panic, at Kaylee playing with other children her age, Blankenship began to holler out for her to come to him, but instead of words, only dirt passed through his lips. The more he tried to speak, the more dirt came out as he watched the shells coming even closer, unbelievably slow. Still, he tried to call out to Kaylee and free himself to run to her, but he was trapped. Quickly, his eyes moved, darting from Kaylee to the shells above. The faster he looked from Kaylee to the shells, the closer and faster the shells came to Kaylee. Suddenly, the dirt left his mouth and he screamed, "Kaylee!" But with a blink, the shell closed in and exploded at Kaylee's feet. "Kaylee!" Blankenship screamed as he awoke from reliving the nightmare of Kaylee's death. Feeling the warmth of the sun on his face seemed to help him to focus on the here and now. Not that he wanted to forget about what had happened, but rather he needed a new strategy. Now, with a slightly clearer mind, Blankenship realized how foolish he had been to let his rage and need for vengeance guide him. He still sought the death of those responsible, but now he could think of a better plan than charging over miles of obstacles with no water, food, or other supplies. With his thirst still strong, he made his way back over to the now trickling stream of water as it made its way down the hill. After quenching his scratchy throat with what water he could purge from the concrete, Blankenship attempted to stand. Feeling like a young child standing for the first time, he stretched out the soreness in his muscles as he attempted to apologize to them and beg for mercy. Discovering everything was still working properly after a minute or two of stretching, Blankenship became thankful to still have his rifle, relieved that it had not been stolen while he lay unconscious in the street. Checking the rifle to ensure it was loaded and on safe, Blankenship began looking for something to capture what he could from the stream of water that was almost gone. Just on the other side of the road, he saw the upper torso of a person lying face down and remembered having his hand covered in blood during his search for water. Walking over, Blankenship wondered just how many people had still been in the area when the Chinese artillery had started. Pushing the thoughts out of his mind and focusing on what he needed helped to deal with the death and destruction. But the one memory he was not able to push aside was of Kaylee. After hours of searching for supplies, Blankenship had found enough to get him by, but the one thing that was still difficult was water. With so many people in one area when the power had gone out, trains were not moving, and with no trucks to bring in supplies, everything that could be consumed had pretty much been used. After finding a half bottle of water beside what was left of somebody unlucky enough to be in the area when the shell exploded, Blankenship went in search of the main source of the stream of water that had saved his life. Walking up the fairly steep hill and doing his best to follow the stream was not easy. Debris-covered roads made travel extremely difficult, and at times impossible, because of toppled buildings that had been struck by high explosive rounds. Blankenship climbed through where he could and sometimes went around, but he always kept track of where the stream had been located. At the top of the hill, he saw what was clearly the source of the water. It was from the city's water tower. Well, what remained of it after suffering a direct strike at the top. The once large round shape was only twisted metal dangling high in the sky. With the explosion occurring within the tank, the water pressure within the pipe running to the top opened up the side like a giant banana. Blankenship ran over, seeing the water still bubbling from the pipes at the base of the tower, and shoved his bottle in to capture the precious liquid. Before the water reached the top, he pulled it from the stream and brought it to his lips, taking in the contents of the bottle before placing it back into the stream. Relieved to have fresh water to quench his thirst, he took a seat alongside the stream as he sipped on the water and filled the bottle while thinking about his next move. Blankenship thought of one plan after another, each being dismissed because of lack of supplies, transportation, or assistance. Still, he drank the water and listened to the slight roar of the wind as it became louder. "Damn, they make this shit seem easy on TV," he said aloud to himself, taking another sip. Again, each plan he tried to formulate always had a reason why it would not work. Softly, Blankenship banged the back of his head against the water tower, while listening to the roar of the wind get even louder, and then it occurred to him that he was not feeling or seeing the wind blowing. Staying low, he made his way around the base of the water tower. With every foot closer he came to the other side, the roar became louder, until off in the distance he spotted the source. 2 Chinese transports were making their way down a street that was passable, and behind them were about 30 men searching buildings that had remained standing. With glee in his voice, Blankenship remarked, "Well, I guess it is time to go back to Plan A." He took another drink of water and replaced the cap. Being a good judge of distance, he began estimating how far the troops were from his current position as he secured the water bottle in his pocket and lay down in the prone position. Judging the distance to be about 400 yards, Blankenship switched his rifle from safe to fire as he took aim just above 2 of the Chinese soldiers' heads. Knowing they would dive for cover as soon as the first man was hit, he waited for soldiers to clear the smoke that drifted up from the burning rubble lying between them. Excitement and adrenaline took over as the soldiers he had in his sights became clear, and without hesitation Blankenship pulled the trigger of his rifle again and again.